which professions have the worst people? As a receptionist, I have to say it, receptionists. I have met so many countless vapid, bitchy, disrespectful, downright awful receptionists, especially medical receptionists. Every single day I do my best to be the complete opposite of that. Yes, there are definitely aspects of the job that can make you feel bitter as hell. But in the end, it's a matter of choosing kindness. Every doctor's hospital I have been to have acted like I chose to be sick. Sorry that it's hard to show you my ID when I am bent over in pain from kidney stones. Every nurse I have ever met has been either a total sweetheart or an overgrown high school bully. I work at the university that offers a degree in nursing. We basically get three types: great people, good at their studies, will be good at the job, bullies who will pass and go on to be no-nonsense hardest nurses, which are sometimes needed, and then the people who should not finish the degree but probably will because getting it right 50% of the time is good enough. I have unfortunately been in the middle of medical administrative cock-ups a few times in my life, things like my GP requesting a test, but when I go to the appointment the paperwork is not complete or the appointment is double booked so they cannot do the right tests. By nothing other than sheer dumb luck. On the last two of these occasions I ended up with one of the no-nonsense hardest nurses on my side, and I have never been more grateful for their existence. They absolutely went the extra mile to ensure that everything I needed happened that day, when it would have been far easier for them to blame the paperwork and send me home. Some of the most broken people I have ever met were mental health workers. Can concur. There's something to Nietzsche's thoughts on staring into the abyss. It's not easy to leave the things you see and know at the office. Source: I'm a psych nurse practitioner. LOL, I work in mental but as a support worker, and I have met mental health nurses who I have absolutely no idea how they still have a license. I have met some horrific support workers also deal with consultant psychiatrists who were notorious for sleeping around, having God complex and treating patients like, I do not even know how to describe it correctly. God complexes abound. Promiscuity. Oh yeah. There are a lot of great providers, nurses, therapists, and aides. But if we don't start cutting the chaff from our field, any good done will be undone. This, plus the loss of our reputation, leaves those suffering from mental illness 1 in 5 people vulnerable to charlatans and grifters who promise what we failed to do. Collections. I worked in IT at a collection agency. People would start out normal, but after a while they would forget to turn off the dick mode they used on the phone when dealing with other people. After a few years, they treated everyone like a deadbeat. I once had a collections company call me. The agent started yelling at me about how I'm just trying to delay paying. I asked for the manager. Manager, if they even were a manager, gets all high and mighty. Starts asking if I did not pay the bill because my wife took all my money and ran off. I did not have a wife, or ex-wife at the time. Tells me that's why I drive a piece of shit and live with my parents. Spends about 30 minutes insulting me. All over a bill from a hospital that I was in the process of contesting. Good thing I recorded the call and got in touch with a lawyer. Collections company ended up footing the bill for me and paying me another $750 directly. I had a collection company call me and berate me over not paying for a car that was bought a while ago. I do not drive. Turns out they were trying to get a hold of a cousin of mine with the same name. They did not believe me and continued to be rude, even when I was calm and trying to give them their information. So much for confidentiality too. They were giving me information I should not have gotten that I did not ask for. Absolutely ridiculous. There are law firms that specialize in dealing with debt collectors that break the law. That's what I ended up using. Between the harassment and calling after 8 p.m., which they are not allowed to do, they ended up paying off the hospital debt I was trying to contest and put money in my pocket. I was a correctional officer for a year in Florida. I cannot say if this profession has the absolute worst people, but it is really bad. Maybe you could imagine what it would be like going into a lockdown facility day after day, coming face to face with some of the worst people imaginable, receiving death threats on a daily basis, dodging manipulation and dealing with some of the absolute insanity that goes on. I have minor PTSD from my year there. The energy in a place like that affects everyone there, unfortunately. The officers there can sometimes take on the energy of the inmates, and some may be just as manipulative, angry, and sometimes insane as the prisoners themselves. This could be a highly subjective thing. Some prisons may be different or better. But I honestly believe that no place like that can harbor a completely good person for long without fundamentally changing who they are. I left because I did not like what the environment was doing to me. I give my absolute full respect to the men and women who do the job as lifelong careers though. There are good people that do the job. Do not get me wrong. It is just incredibly hard to keep it up in the midst of such conditions. My brother was a CO in Snohomish County, WA, and was really keen on becoming a cop before he took the job. After a couple years he decided to give up that dream, and is now a doctor of criminal justice who is rather wary of most cops and COs. He still talks shit on the majority of the people he worked with. Generally failed cops with superiority complexes. Which somehow sounds even worse than cops. A weird moment in my life was when I was standing in a cell with my cellie who was on murder charges and we were watching out of our window while this CO was attempting to provoke a guy into hitting him so that he could then beat the shit out of him, not for the first time either. And my cellie was like, that dude is ducked up. That is right. Murder buddy. That guy is ducked up. Swear to God. Hand on heart. If murder buddy gets out of prison and needs a bed, he has one in my house. But the ducking CO is not getting past the ducking gate of my house. He has serious ducking problems. My brother is an AZCO. Back in September our mom's health took a turn for the worse and I went home to help while we sorted things out. Mom ended up passing. At some point during the while we were driving to the funeral home, my brother recounted what happened at work the night my mom died. First a fight between cellies. He grabbed the fogger and went, ready to gas someone. But the situation was resolved before he got there. Later a fight and a mess. He grabbed gear ready to fog mace someone. There was a third conflict at the end of his shift. Again. Resolved before he could get there and take care of it. Listening to this story, he sounded like a blue-balled high school kid eager to get his rocks off. This solidified for me that my brother was not anywhere near a good person. MLM marketers, or at least those who are actually successful with MLMs, can confirm. My cousin does one of the beauty ones, and all I see on her Facebook page is this shit. She used to be cool and fun to hang out with. Then she got into the road and field crap and it all went downhill. For real. One of my friends got into MLM jewelry sales. I think she is giving people discounted jewelry in exchange for them randomly posting photos and videos on her Facebook wall thanking her for all the wonderful jewelry they got from her. It looks absurdly cheap and badly made. Television evangelists. I think Jesus, who famously threw the money changers out of the temple for profaning a sacred space, would have a lot to say on the matter of televangelists. Oh, every Christian wise to this scam has a lot to say to them. The pastor at my church said that they are pimping out Christianity. Private security military contractors. Some of those companies are top tier on the level. But more than a few are filled with guys who could not hack it in the military police force but still want to carry guns and tell people what to do. Guys who could not hack it in the military police force but still want to carry guns and tell people what to do. Amen. Came here to say this. Welp. I met a really nice ex-military guy who worked for a private security firm, whilst I was having a brief stay in a psych ward in 2005. To which I am proud to say I admitted myself. Turns out that every time he came home from a wee spell in Iraq he admitted himself to the psych ward. I asked him what was the most stressful part of his job, and he said shooting at people. I would have guessed being shot at, but he said, sadly, number. Anyway. We got on very well. And the day I was being discharged, he asked me if I felt ready to be discharged. Because he said he knew how to ensure you would not be if you did not want to be. I was happy to go home but curious about his method so long as it did not involve threats of violence to the current or previous spotters. So he explained that you had to tell the doctors you could not stop. I am not going to use the word he used, but in English public schools it is referred to as being rude to yourself. And he said when they asked you how many times a day you were rude to yourself you had to tell them at least. And I have forgotten the specific number. Which is a shame because it is a key detail. But that is what he used to do when he had not had enough of a rest. Of course. You have to consider that both he and I were inpatients in a psych ward. 7 the number is 7. Dog training. I always wanted to work with animals. Had a few jobs working at training facilities that promoted using great methods. Said all the right things. Saw some horrific things happen behind the scenes when the customers left their loved pets in their care. Quit after my conscience got the better of me and I could not live with the burden of the sheer amount of stress it caused knowing I was complicit in working with those people. They can have a beautiful boarding facility, say all the right things, but you really never know what happens to your pet when you leave them there. That's horrifying. Mental health. Some excellent people. Some I would turn and run from if I saw them on the street. In my experience as a lifelong patient, early onset schizo, nursing assistants in psychiatry are the worst. They are burnt out, bitter at best, usually just straight up cruel and give zero ducks about patients' emotional well-being. Seem to get a power trip from degrading us, especially the young ones. Constant drama and infighting in most institutions too, from what you can overhear. They tend to scream all the time at everything. I have met a few decent ones, but then I have also met one that got fired because he pet his co-worker in the bathroom at night, in a pediatric ward, loudly. We all woke up to the noise. So yeah, mixed bag. Seem to get a power trip from degrading us, especially the young ones. Constant drama and infighting in most institutions too, from what you can overhear. They tend to scream all the time at everything. That's the thing. I feel like the industry has super low standards for professionals. You can pretty much perform to whatever standards you want. No one will call you on it. Plenty bust ass, and plenty openly give zero shits. So it draws a certain type that gets high off the low standards. Power imbalance. An abject lack of any accountability. Go figure. That type is often an immature shit starter. Because he raped his co-worker. His mistake was not targeting a patient. Even the good professionals will automatically circle wagons around colleagues. They have to know shitheads if a patient complains or makes accusations or is obviously harmed. I have seen so much crap done to sweep one person's dirt under the rug. His mistake that time. I have never worked in hospitality but know a lot of people who used to. They rarely have anything nice to say about managers in hospitality. I think being a manager in hospitality is often a position you kind of fail into. You start out in the hospitality industry when you are young. You are good at it. It pays the bills all right. But you do not really grow as a person or have any goals. Next thing you know, you realize you are kind of too old to have the job you have forever. But you do not really have any skills outside of the hospitality industry. So you move on up to management. Not because hospitality management was ever a goal of yours, or that you have a passion for that sort of thing. It is just that working in hospitality is all you know and you do not want to wait tables, work the front desk, whatever anymore. If you have to fail, at least fail upwards. I am a bartender. Please don't drag me. Chefs. Chefs are either arrogant dickheads or awesome people. There is basically no in between. Used to deliver to restaurants. I had the dickheads that would tell me they are too busy to sign an invoice. The dickheads that would open up canned crab products and then send it back after opening it. You ordered canned crab, you ducking idiot. What did you expect? The dickheads who would expect me to maneuver 400 pounds of product around a line where like 7 people were prepping to get to the walk-in upstairs. The dickheads who would yell at me if something they ordered was not in the order, even though it was not on the invoice. Then there were the guys who had like 8 pans and a griddle top going. Would come over to check the freshness of everything personally. Give me a bite of whatever they were making and cold water and then jump back in without missing a beat and just be basically chill as duck. The assholes outnumbered the cool ones like 10-1. I have worked in kitchens my whole life and I have narrowed the types of chefs down to pros and factory workers. Worked in an Italian joint and the chef from Italy would go out into the dining room and talk to the guests if they had a complaint. He had assured them their salad was made by his teenage apprentice and that he would personally remake it and buy it for them. The guests would sometimes start extremely irritated and by the end of the conversation they were usually laughing like old friends. The man was a straight-up G, and knew his title commanded respect and that his going to the guests personally from time to time would make their wild night. Feeling valued by the bloody chef de cuisine in the middle of dinner service. He could do this because his sous chefs were trained properly and could hold the line if he dipped for 10 minutes. He knew the name of the game was hospitality, and to him that meant being good to people, guests and staff alike, as though the house was his actual house. Then there is the factory workers. They treat their kitchen as though it was an island far away from the dining room, so far they may as well be in a Ford assembly line with servers walking around. These clowns typically treat the front of house as though they're obstacles to their service and not part of the same organism. Usually these factory worker types also watch too many cooking TV shows and think having the emotional intelligence of a turnip is a personality. I took the LSAT twice, preparing to get into patent law. Then 2 patent lawyers from a big firm in Detroit did a meet greet at our school. Complete self-absorbed narcissistic douchebags. I remained a software engineer and am glad I did. That culture would have made me regret having been born. I work in patent law. Older generation lawyers tend to be way worse. I hate working with most older patent attorneys. Old adversarial. Young work together. Different legal fields tend to attract different personalities. I could make some broad generalizations on different areas, but I feel like people might complain. Do it anyways. What are the personalities for fields of law? I have a bunch of friends in law school and this feels like a tag yourself meme, lol. People in tech can make so much money at such a young age, with so little education and certification, that it naturally attracts some of the worst little shits you have ever wanted to strangle with a mouse cord. The egos are in the stratosphere, but the social skills can be down somewhere in the Mariana Trench. This software engineer here. Insane how overinflated everyone's egos are. Apparently knowing Python and making 6 figures is all it takes for a 23-year-old to think he is a god. Calm down, Jake. We are making buttons, not curing cancer. Know this too well. Couple years ago when we graduated, friend's friend moved to Nick on and off doing software development at a bank. Pays well obviously. Second year on the job. Proceeds to lease a swanky by my standards apartment. The kind with floor-to-ceiling windows. 2 throw-down roofs. Constantly updates his Instagram with positive messages like some personal betterment coach. And occasionally drops wisdom on his followers about never giving up on the dream. And how he pulled himself out of poverty. Like, dude, who are you kidding? This guy came from a dentist family and had all his college tuition and living expenses paid for. It is all just things he tells himself because he codes and cobble all day. Oil field workers. Full of meatheads that grew up poor as dirt that make a year's salary in half the calendar year, so they come home and act like jackasses that own the world because they have a few bucks in their pockets. Now this looks like a job for me. Can you treat just about everyone that makes less money than you like complete shit and start trouble just about any time you are in public? No. But I'm willing to learn. Apparently showbiz might have to associate with assholes. But that is showbiz, baby, jazz hands. Truckers. Holy shit. I have worked too many jobs where truck drivers make everything more difficult for me than they ever had to be. In a warehouse job, why is this truck backing up to a loading dock 4 hours late? Dunno. We told him to wait in the staging area until we found out where we could work him in. Trucker then begins to freak the duck out because he has to be unloaded to pick up his next load in 2 hours. Well, Mr. Trucker, maybe you should have let us know you were going to be 4 hours ducking late. Working as a night security guard in college. Trucker, I have a delivery to be unloaded at 4. I will see what I can do. But we do not start receiving until 6:00. Well, you had better figure something out. My paperwork says for me. Takes closer look at paperwork, it does. But we are company A. You are deliveries for company B up the road. Well, how the hell do I get there from here? Well, head back out to the main road. Takes another look at paperwork. I can tell you how to get to Tampa from Jacksonville. But after that, you are on your own. Dumbus went to the wrong business in the wrong city. Then demanded to be able to deliver to us anyway. Since he was already here. Contracted to the railroad. Trailer got run over by a crane after he had been told literally half a dozen times, do not ducking park any part of your truck or trailer in between the yellow lines. The crane is obviously passing through them. The crane cannot move around you. The crane operator can also not see you since the 6-foot ducking tires on either side of them create a giant ducking blind spurt. 3 stories is enough, I feel. But I have dozens. Even with my current job, I still keep getting more. I understand it is an essential business. We need drivers who can haul things, lots of things from point A to point B. But Jesus titty-ducking Christ. When you get the idiot ones, they test the limits of human stupidity. You know, I am glad you said this. I would not call them sociopaths, but I have noticed truckers get real bitchy when mildly inconvenienced, even when they inconvenienced you first. I worked at a job that shared a driveway with a place trucks would come to for unloading, not sure on specifics. But it was gated, closed, and did not open. Today I learned 8 while I had to be at work at 7. Almost every morning there would be at least one truck, and sometimes multiple, parked in front of my work's driveway while they waited on the gates to open. You would not believe the attitude I got for asking if they could back up and not block the way in the future. Like, yeah, I get it is a huge ordeal to move your giant truck in the tight space it is in, but you would not have to if you just parked 5 feet further back. I am not a professional driver, but even I know you don't block the entrance to a business and park there. This happened to me once when a truck was early to the warehouse I worked in. I pulled up to the entrance that the truck was completely blocking. Turn signal on. Car angled to turn into gate, truck was blocking. Literally 100s of yards on either side of gate where truck could have parked, not obstructing anything. Ducking driver leans out the window with the most dumbfounded look on his face and points towards the business. Yes sir. Believe it or not, I need to pull into work before I can open the warehouse. Right. Sheer ducking amazement that people work there. I can picture it so well. Oh, you got to get in there. Politics. My maths teacher in high school was a politician. It was very hard to cope with her. My 7th grade teacher was a local politician. She lasted half a school year before quitting. Looking back, we were little shits. And she did her best. But I guess it was not enough. I am a programmer myself, but I have to say software design. Not everyone in the profession is like this at all. But there are a lot of people who are really snotty about your university alma mater, relative inexperience with programming or a particular language, their knowledge about CompC or programming. Computer science is really not always that welcoming a field. Unfortunately. That probably goes double or triple if you are a female and either get creeped on or have to deal with resentment when you know more than the nerds. Computer science is really not always that welcoming a field. Unfortunately. That probably goes double or triple if you are a female and either get creeped on or have to deal with resentment when you know more than the nerds. In college, I would play the game of I will say it once. I will tell someone in my group the right answer once. If they do not take my advice or worse, ridicule me for it, I would not repeat myself. I may be an a-hole. But I stopped working in groups after I realized men will never allow me to be part of the group or listen to me. Could you be like the secretary of the group? My favorite part of one job as a sysadmin was when people would come to the sysadmin office. See, it was just me, others were out or not in yet, and ask something like, are there any real sysadmins here? Happened at least 3 times that I remember. Would not be surprised if there were more. Do people not learn who Grace Hopper was? Life coaches. Every person I have met who is a life coach is seriously the most worthless, ducked up person I have ever come across. I got set up on a blind date with a girl who was training to be a life coach. She lived with like 4 roommates in her late 20s and had an air of misery about her. Is not the coach supposed to know the playbook? Sales. Salesmanship and dishonesty go hand in hand. Dealing with this at my work. I work for a healthcare provider credentialing company. We work with providers to get them credentialed with hospitals so they can provide services. Our sales team hard upsold Reed bullshitted a new client, telling them we had all these footholds in all these markets which we did not have, so now this client has expectations far above what we can reasonably deliver. But it's not sales problem anymore. They've made their sale, collected their commission, and left the client at our feet to clean up the mess. Flashbacks to my old workplace. Those idiots sold the world and I was left to convince them the world was merely a tabletop globe. Did not help that my operations department was shite at their jobs, which made my day-to-day running of the damn software a nightmare. Working in healthcare, I know like one surgeon that does not act like an entitled toddler. Just treat every other human on planet like they are inherently less worthy of life than they are. Just wretched people. My surgeon gynecological oncologist was amazing and super nice, and for a male supportive of women's right to choose what happens to her body, unlike my regular gynecologist who was all about having to save my ovary so I can reproduce. Despite my insistence I did not plan to have any more children than the one I have. Surgeon was all, if anything else gives you trouble and you want it removed then come back. I hate how hard the push is for young women to keep their ability to reproduce when these organs are causing pain and problems. Our. The villainy of our depends a lot on the culture handed down by company executives. My experiences with my our debt, even the one time I ducked up and had to be reprimanded, were very helpful and caring. The time I ducked up, the head of our actually opted to take the meeting with me, and she made it very clear that she did not want to let me go, and asked me what she could do to help me so that the issue would not happen again. We spent about a half hour talking it out and figuring out what to do. It was a personal life thing causing me to not get things done, and it led to me taking liberties with company time. I was shocked that she actually acknowledged that I was in a rut, and that not only did I need help to get out of it, but that I deserved that help. Honestly, the only people in this company to make me not feel like a human resource was our human resources department. After years in the corporate world, I am inclined to think that, because it was our and not your boss, that whatever personal issue you had would have caused problems for the company were they to fire you for that reason. It is more likely that coaching was cheaper than onboarding a replacement. Real estate. Real estate agents are vultures, and barely useful or necessary in modern society. Scrolled way too far to see this one. They are in a position to suckle off a piece of huge sales and end up taking way more than their job should pay. The more narcissistic and sociopathic, the more successful. Agree 100%. They are parasites, and somehow believe they are skilled even though most housing markets in the world are overcooked, and a monkey could sell a house. Duck them. Soldiers. Not to insult the people who are just trying to live their lives or do have a desire to keep land safe, but for some reason a lot of the people who openly claim to be military are self-absorbed, arrogant, pushy, aggressive, and seem to like threatening people who disagree with them. They look down on other citizens and seem to think that they deserve our praise just for existing. I will tell you some advice my staff sergeant gave me when I was in that turns out to be pretty accurate. The guys who brag about it the most when they get out are the ones that probably did the least when they were in. My 92-year-old grandfather served in Korea. He never saw combat, he was more of a behind-the-scenes guy, but to this very day, you cannot get him to talk about what happened over there. The only reason I knew he was a veteran was because my mom told me, and because he goes to the VA for his medical care. The first time he ever told me he was a veteran was when I was about 25 years old. Drug dealers. Not all of them. There are some friendly weed and shroom dealers, but hard drug dealers are often the type of people who should be isolated from society in a metal box until death. Is drug dealing considered a profession now? Street pharmacy. Tech at high levels. The regular engineers are political naifs but decent people. The managers, the colonial forces sent in to exploit these nerds for capitalism's benefit, are awful. I do not love MBA culture, but they have their mix of good and bad people, as is the case everywhere. Thing is, the genuinely intelligent ones end up doing statistical arbitrage, and the conscientious ones usually go into non-profits. And the ones with genuine charisma usually become glorified salespeople in banking or private equity. So the ones who get sent west to boss nerds around tend to be the leftovers with no real talent. And they're terrible. Then we have the blockchain fraudsters. The goofy consultants who get paid $475 an hour to teach adults how to build Lego houses using agile methodologies. The embarrassing libertarian politics. And the people who've decided the ethics of today do not matter because the singularity is only 5 years away and it is going to end scarcity and make us all immortal. It would not. I refuse to work in tech with someone higher up who only has an MBA but play off power poses and vocabulary such as lean-in and scalable. What pisses me off about scalable is that it is an actual ducking thing. We keep purchasing absurdly expensive, customizable software platforms that we need to use for a very large business. And all the purchasing managers grin when they ask if it is scalable and everyone nods and says shit like we will scale it. Then we try to use it for 20x the size of their typical installation. And it ends up requiring a small army of workers to maintain because IT is not actually scalable. We keep purchasing absurdly expensive, customizable software platforms that we need to use for a very large business. And all the purchasing managers grin when they ask if it is scalable and everyone nods and says shit like we will scale it. The imprecision of thought in technology management is a big part of why I cannot stand these people. They think they are brilliant visionaries or whatever, but their minds segfault at 1.5 levels of detail. And that turns out to be a social asset. Because we live in a culture that glorifies unfounded confidence and punishes precise thinking. Meanwhile, people who actually are detail literate like me are expected to clean up their messes. I am not actually a snob. I have met cab drivers with, I am guessing here, 80 IQs, and I have met cab drivers with, again, guessing 145 plus IQs, and I am not going to judge people in either case. No one deserves to be judged for what he is born with. The ones I cannot stand are the ones who are just above average, say, typical Harvard MBA, but think they are seraphim of talent because of their pedigree and rank. Doctor's receptionist. They are rude. I used to be a receptionist transcriptionist for a couple of really nice docs, but for some reason, they never fired the office manager, who was an absolute terror to staff and patients, literally screaming over every little thing at the drop of a hat. It's like they were in denial about her. To this day, I've never understood why some of the sweetest personalities associate with some of the worst bitches ever to walk the earth. I didn't last long there. If I am not mistaken, the professions with the most psychopaths, people who have no concern for other human beings, are CEOs, police officers, surgeons, and some other ones I forget. I mean, the average person would not be able to cut someone's side open. It seems like a productive, positive path for a sociopath, as long as they are doing their best work in surgery. He works for corporate, so he is not really a part of our family. And he is divorced, so he is really not a part of his family either.